Hey folks, Triple Crown here, coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. This is Operation Cool Summer Round 11 summary, and the tide is changing, and the winds are changing. It's a battle of attrition, and whichever side or whichever direction the Axis or the Allies seem to sort of trend towards, it sort of weakens them in other areas. So we'll kind of get into it. It's kind of interesting here and see the American Navy has positioned itself off of Calcutta and a smaller Navy off of Madras. So the American Navy could be in the Mediterranean. It has left, which it needs to put pressure on the Japanese over here in the South Pacific, because definitely this could mean the Japanese are not going to utilize their transports to go and attack Calcutta, but it also means that the Japanese want to deal with this small American Navy. It's going to have to send resources elsewhere, which currently the Japanese Navy will get into sort of the predicament that it is in, but it's got a small Navy down here, which could deal with that American Navy, but that would definitely swing the tide in the Allies' favor in other areas. But why this is a problem for the Allies over here is because the Italians are also building their Navy. They built 4 submarines last turn. So the tide in the Med is starting to shift towards the Italians. And there's a bit of a standoff happening here. They're playing ping pong with all these territories here in the Middle East. And currently, with the Americans now joining the Allies, it gives the Allies the advantage, at least in the Middle East. But, do the Italians and the Germans gain that naval superiority and start to land units over here in North Africa and approach Cairo from the backside, which is going to force the Allies to then fight a sort of a two-front battle in the Middle East and also in Africa. So that is going to be at play here, because there's lots of victory objectives here at play with the oil points, the resources, Cairo, the waterways, and then all the resources that are tied to Northern Africa and also all these little islands here in the Mediterranean. So still a lot of battle to be played. Not a lot happening here in the North Atlantic. The Germans are just building as many ground units per turn as they can to sort of head towards bulking up the Atlantic Wall and also towards securing Gibraltar for the remainder of the game, which is a waterway point, which is part of one of the 5 waterways they have to secure. So you can see here in Norway a bulk up of German units. There's about 10 units there right now. Germany continues to build units, and they also use their trains from Berlin to bring an additional 6 units down to Bulgaria, and also they flew their air transports down to, I think this is Istanbul, to drop off another 2 infantry. They're just trying to get as many ground units as possible to sort of win the battle of attrition. But the Americans, they have about 14 or 15 units down here now, and that is pretty significant. It's definitely stalemated the Axis advance. Also, the British and the South Africans continue to build units in South Africa and shuck them up via transport to Cairo or Transjordan. So that's pretty significant there. The American Navy here did come down to Brazil. There's just two armor units and 2 infantry and 3 destroyers. But the real tide is sort of happening here as the British now sort of definitely have the upper hand in regards to Calcutta and the battle for India. Japan only has 8 or 9 ground units sitting in Siam, and there's a swath more sitting in Calcutta as the combined FEC and British forces continue to push sort of west towards the Middle East, and they now have 3 military bases on the board again, so they're able to produce 6 units, not including the 1 British unit that is able to be produced per turn. So they are just pumping out units. But the real sort of maybe the game and sort of what it holds in balance is Japanese Navy here sitting, I think there's about a combined 23 units between these 2 navies here and Air Force. they could go attack the Americans next turn over here. And if it was just a combined or not a combined defense of just American units, definitely the Japanese would have the upper hand, but the Americans built a air base sort of in Marshall Islands, and that allows them to scramble 3 of the Anzac fighters that would help protect them. So that actually gives the Allies the defensive advantage. Now, Japan could regain that if they flew these bombers, these medium bombers in range and combined their Navy. But definitely the American objective was achieved in positioning their Navy last turn off of Wake Island, because that forced the Japanese, instead of building Navy, they had to reinforce Fukuhara and Tokyo. So they spent $60 worth of ground units just bulking up those territories to make sure they're secure, which they had to do. But that meant the Americans had another turn of repositioning, and now they're also forcing the Japanese to continue building Navy, which if they do, is going to maybe, swing the tide back in their favor, but it also weakens their ground position here in Asia. The Japanese did recapture some of the Money Islands. There's only one Money Island left, and that is Celebes, which is in control of the Americans. Down here, off of New Zealand, the British and the Anzac are slowly rebuilding their Navy. And the Americans last turn, and this is where they sort of gained a little bit of the upper hand, as they built 2 submarines, 3 destroyers, a battleship, and a B-29, that's huge. The B-29 drops 4 dice at 4, and it flies, I believe, 8 spaces. The Canadians and the British are building units now off of British Columbia per turn. There's a drop off of an infantry and a medium tank off in Hawaii with a destroyer and transport, and off the coast of British Columbia is another infantry and armor, a destroyer, and a transport. So they continue to sort of spend money in the Pacific, helping out the Americans, and we'll see. There's 4 rounds left for the Americans to sort of stop the Japanese from controlling all these Money Islands and Philippines and also other Pacific islands, and Hong Kong and Shanghai. They're all at play. And also China's still at play. We haven't talked about China this round. And it's a bit of a stalemate here happening. Japan is definitely going to have to spend money here to reinforce, and maybe, do they go and wipe out the Chinese that have been sitting there for the last few rounds? We'll see if that's the direction that they decide to go. So stay tuned, folks. It should be an exciting finish.